One. Good job. Jazz guitar lessons out there. High five. Welcome to the impromptu jam with Nathan Korn and Marc. I'm still in French in my head. When I play jazz, I think changes in my head. En français, always. So thanks for being here. This is the office hours for June 12th, 2018. It's 3 p.m. local time, and we're going to run and get you guys' questions. Answer questions we received by email with your typical host and your not so typical host, but the guy behind jazzguitarlessons.net.
The man himself.
Mark, I saw a guy in the subway in Montreal. Like, are you the guy from jazzguitarlessons.net? Like, yes. That's me.
That's it.
So take it away, Nathan.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks for letting me use your beautiful Godin guitar. I love it.
No problem. I'll bill you.
Oh.
No problem.
Thank you for joining us, everybody. If you're watching live, don't forget that you can always comment live on the stream. We'll be looking at the stream from time to time. Make sure if you have any questions, you can let us know. And you can always send in your questions by email. You can always send them into nathan@jazzguitarlessons.net. If you are joining us live, if you are signed into a Google account or a YouTube account, same difference, owned by the same company now. Then you can comment below. It's usually the chat box is usually to the bottom left or directly to the left. Right.
To the right of the video. Yeah, I just typed in ask questions here. Mm-hmm. Of course, if you're watching this on the Jazz Guitar Store or store.jazzguitarlessons.net platform, you're watching this later, you're not live, you can ask questions below as a comment, whatever we talked about. In fact, we just jammed on Stella by Starlight, and the challenge for this week for students is to figure out what the heck we were doing in the second chorus. Good luck with that.
Do I know? Do I have to answer that challenge? I don't know what I did.
We don't even know what we were doing. We're just listening to each other.
Let us know in the comments below. As always, we have questions from viewers, and we're happy to answer them. There were some questions. Actually, the questions that we're going to start off with are from Niall. He's asking questions all the time. It's always good to have him on the stream. These are questions that I didn't get to last week, but I wanted to, and they're pretty decent questions. So if that's it with housekeeping, I think we'll go straight into it.
Please.
All right.
Be my guest.
So Niall's first question is, hi Nathan, can you name one or two of your favorite minor bebop tunes? I particularly like the minor sound in swing and bebop. There seems usually less chords in a minor blues than a major blues. Is there a reason for that? The minor blues takes the same form as B.B. King's "Thrill Has Gone" type tune. We can definitely start talking about our favorite bebop tunes.
So there's about like 5 questions that are hidden within that same question here.
See if we can sort of nail all of them all together. To start off with, one of the ones that when we read this question, one of the ones that we thought of immediately was Burke's Works, Dizzy Gillespie tune.
F minor blues,
yeah.
Typically. Yeah.
So it's a 12-bar form, and it's like looking to Marc. But do I remember Burke's Works all that well?
Dizzy Gillespie.
Dizzy, yeah. Burke's Works named after his middle name, John Burks Gillespie.
Is that right? Yeah.
I think that's something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You have to hit up my old jazz theory prof to make sure that's right.
Or Wikipedia quietly on your phone. So Burke's Works, what else?
Burke's Works is a good one. There's some elements of minor bebop sounds everywhere. For example, we were also talking about the Yardbird Suite. It's a Charlie Parker tune.
Which is not, in fact, a minor song. It's in C major, but the point is it goes to a backdoor progression. So F minor 7 to B flat 7 back to C major, meaning that, this is sort of a parallel C minor sort of thing. Mm-hmm. That's a good one. It's a good one to know, period. Other?
Also, the bridge goes to a very heavy E minor sound. So 2-5, F sharp minor 7-5-5 to B7 to E minor, that sort of thing. One that just occurred to me, A Night in Tunisia.
Oh, right.
Is a fantastic one.
Another Dizzy.
Yeah, what is it? What is it? Isn't it? Yeah, it's
G flat to F.
G flat to F. Is it that?
Oh, I don't know what key it said. I forgot.
It's in D minor. That's right. Okay. So it's What the heck is it? So yeah, that was cool.
So that's a really good bebop one. If I may add, oh yeah, that's also one of the tune of the months. You can find this in our catalog. Yeah, it was published recently. It's a really interesting arrangement, as usual.
Yeah.
Nick, our friend, partner in crime, produces these amazing. So also, if you want to learn minor-ish bebop within the first few bars of what we call bird blues, there's a video on YouTube and on jazzguitarlessons.net about bird blues. We use Tommy Flanagan Freight Train.
That's
and it's
right.
in the key of A flat in that example. But the point is, it's a song that immediately goes to the minor key. And you were playing Blues for Alice earlier.
Blues for Alice, another bird blues. So named because it really made famous by, or that form was really made famous by Bird, Charlie Parker. We mentioned him in Yardbird Suite just a little moment ago. They like calling him Bird a lot.
Yeah. And of course, there are a lot of tunes. A few of them came to mind, but there's nothing like going to the source. So there's this series of books by David Baker. David Baker, How to Play Bebop. There's probably more, but I have 3 of them. And the second book is basically just a bunch of patterns and licks over 2-5-1s and things like that. And the last page of the book is a list of essential bebop tunes for memorization. There's 55 of them, and I'm sure if you start there, you can get a lot of good minor songs for reference. One of my favorites that I still play to this day is a Bill Evans song called A Simple Matter of Conviction. Oh. It's not a bop tune, but it's an interesting D minor blues 12-bar form, but in 3/4.
Oh yeah.
It goes like this. It's very inspired, very interesting to play, much slower. So you can look it up. It's the recording's horrible. Like it doesn't sound good. They play it way too fast, and drums are all over the map. But it's Bill Evans. So it's one of my
Simple Matter of Conviction.
Simple Matter of Conviction. Yeah. Look it up. Great head to play jam sessions, because you can tell the guys, hey, do you want to play a minor blues? Like, yeah. What key? D minor. Yeah. By the way, it's in 3/4, and they're like, okay, fine,
sure.
Let's just do it. So that,
and then you just play the head over it. Good. Actually, blueses in general are very good for that. If you know a blues head, you just tell them what key it's in, and a couple of identifying factors too. Like, do you get a 6-2-5 turnaround? Is it a bebop blues? Is it a simple blues form, like a shuffle blues?
Or is it flat 6-5-1 cadence, things like that?
Yeah, and then you're off to the races after that. You just play your melody over what they're doing, and you're good. So blues is just knowing blues heads in general, great for jams in general. So Niall, I hope that
helps for your question. And I wanted to add, why there's more chords to. That's the second part of the question.
That's right. Yeah, there seems usually less chords in a minor blues than a major blues. Is there a reason for that? I wouldn't say there generally is less chords. It depends on what you're looking at. I mean, in general, the blues forms that you find in the actual blues style, B.B. King and like any of the Kings, and
Buddy Guy,
exactly. Any of those, especially the guitar-centric blues genre, you'll find that they usually play the more quote-unquote simple blues, not disparaging, just like there's fewer chords. So you generally find fewer chords in that. You got 1, 4, 5, and maybe some embellishment to that, but that's the skeleton, and it's like rock solid. But in the bebop tradition and in the jazz genres, you find a lot more chords, because what's that joke about jazz guitarists playing 4 chords, or sorry, 1 million chords to 4 people in the room, or something like that.
Anyway. And the rock guitarist playing 3 chords to 1 million people, with 10,000 people in the crowd.
That's right.
So I would like to add, the answer to this question, that sometimes if you pick a blues key, so say, what's a good key to play minor blues in? G or?
Well, I mean, there's always C.
Okay.
Minor bebop blues. Mr. PC.
Oh yeah.
It's a Good old Stand by C minor, John Coltrane too.
But my point is when it's slow-ish and it's bebop-ish, there's not less chords. So you want to do key of C. So you know that in the beginning you'll be playing over C minor of some sort, but then in bar 5 you're going to the 4 or for even minor 6 or more tonic type of minor blues. Darker. And the point is, before that chord, people will add a passing 2/5 or add something.
Yeah.
And that will make it sound like, oh, there are more chords, but they're not necessarily more chords to the composition, but it might be the way people are jamming together, and the piano player will always add a secondary dominant or have something more to the progression that is not on paper. So it depends on the context a lot.
It definitely depends on the musicians you're jamming with. What it comes down to, as an aside, is it generally comes down to a way of how you interpret the major landmarks of harmony in the song that you're playing. All blueses go from like 1 to 4, and then back to 1, and then to 5. And then that turns around back to 1, and that's the end of the piece. And then you do it all over again. 12 bars usually. That's the simplest way of looking at it, and that's usually the skeleton of of the simple blues that we expound upon on jazzguitarlessons.net. So what Marc's talking about here is if you have any one of these chords, well, you know how in jazz we use 2s and 5, the 2/5 cadence. We can use that all the time to get anywhere we want to go. So if we want to go to 4, then play 2/5 of 4. Secondary dominant cadences to 4. Play secondary dominant cadences going to 5 that eventually bring you back round to 1. So you can interpolate the harmony in any number of ways to add more complexity or more embellishment, but you're still going to 1, 4, 5, back to 1. That's the blues.
And then you get blueses with exceptions, like if you look at all blues, it's not really a blues form. It's in 6/8. It's like, and it's like, it's kind of a blues, but it's not really. And what's the other one? Freddie Freeloader. Instead of going back to the 1 chord at the end, you do 5, 4, flat 7.
Yeah, just to add even more tension before you get back to bar 1, and you're on 1. I mean, all blues is actually really close anyway to a blues. It's like you start on G7, you go to C7, you go back to G7, and then you're on D, E flat 7, back to D. So it's kind of like back to G7. Yeah.
You all know the song.
Yeah.
It's all kind of blues.
So yeah, that's still the same skeleton, but it's embellishing it even more, and it's about the more grand idea of creating tension before finally resolving all that tension to where you want to go. So the thing that I can't emphasize enough is you really want to be thinking about your major landmarks, where you're trying to end up at all times. And then from there, it becomes a simple matter of like, well, how many different paths can we take to get there? And that's jazz. So
there you go. Jazz in 3 sentences.
Yeah.
By Nathan Korn.
Yes. I just ruined the secret of jazz musicians.
Sorry, guys. Have to check out another website or something.
A musician never reveals his secrets.
We spoiled it for you guys.
Yeah. Joke's on you. I'm not a real musician. So we have a second question from Niall. And it's completely different on a completely different topic. So Niall says the C major arpeggio works really well over the A minor chord. You want to demonstrate for us, Marc?
Of course. So just an A minor cowboy, and then that would be.
So I'll play the low A. So you can hear how the C major arpeggio that Marc is playing gets fundamentally changed by this low bass. And for all of you who've tuned into my office hours previously, I've talked at length several times about how we can take a line or a motif or an arpeggio, whatever it is, a gesture, a musical gesture, and put it in a different harmonic context, and the feeling changes. The way the color or feeling or whatever other metaphors you want to use for music. Feeling is probably a pretty good one. it gets changed by the new context. It's like taking the subject of one painting and putting it into the background of another painting, and it means something entirely different. Don't do that. The art galleries will get really angry at you. You know, so, but it's that sort of idea over and over again here. What Niall is asking about is he's finding that taking these familiar structures that he already knows, he knows a C major arpeggio. He knows that, and playing it over a different context, like an A minor chord or an A bass, changes the way that sound feels or sounds, I guess. But it also makes it really easy as a guitarist for finding these fingerings and relationships between different structures. So he says, I find this helpful as it meant using arpeggios I already knew the shape of and I started using them in more situations instantly. Can you discuss what other arpeggio relationships there might be that jazz beginners could be made aware of?
Especially if I might add that the fact is A minor and C major have a really privileged relationship. They're the relative minor of one another. So you know C minor chord, A minor chord. And so to do it in a super dry, and I don't like doing this, but I'll do it anyways, super dry and elliptical fashion. So if you're running an A minor chord of some sort and you play C, D, G, D, what you're doing is actually doing 3, 5, flat 7, 9 of your A minor chord. So your mental shortcut is to go from A minor to C major, and all you're doing is looking a third above, but in the same key. You're doing a third above diatonically, and this is bound to work because instead of doing 1, 3, 5, 7, you're doing 3, 5, 7, 9. And you could do the same with 5, 7, 9, 11.
Yeah,
you could do it up, or you couldn't even do it down, which
start on 13 root, third, fifth, if you wanted to.
Exactly, or do. I'll let you continue your train of thought.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah.
But that was my 2 cents.
Yeah, 2 cents. It's like 3.5 cents at least.
Yeah, sorry.
Don't undersell yourself.
It's inflation.
It's inflation in these economic times. Yeah. So this one of the term that we use for this principle is, in general, as a catch-all, is upper structure. So a C major chord is the upper structure, or a C major arpeggio is the upper structure of an A minor chord. So if you have your bass playing an A chord, an A, and then, as Marc said, you play the flat 3, the C, the 5 E, the flat 7 G, and then the 9 B of A. Well, really, what this boils down to, instead of thinking about it in terms of playing the 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th of A, you're really just being like, A minor, let's play the upper structure. It's a C major arpeggio, as it so happens. There are a lot of this works for just about any chord in a scale, especially in a major scale or a relative minor scale. So any chord in C major or A minor, right? They share the same notes. It's the same neighborhood, just on a stormy day versus a sunny day. Let's just say, same notes, different perspective. So one thing that works really nicely is there's 2 things I want to talk about just to cap it off. So the first thing I want to talk about is upper structures for dominant chords, the all-important dominant chord, and also using triad pairs to express as upper structures for different chords.
Okay.
I'll let you handle that one after.
No, I'll let you do this. I'm just going to go have a coffee and let you finish this one.
Okay,
bye.
Sure.
So what?
Good riddance, Marc. Sorry.
Yeah. What about the guitar? Keep it. It's all your studio.
Yes.
Just keep doing the whole thing. So check this out. Before you get into that, so you have dominant chord superimpositions that are pretty easy, in fact, and really useful, and pairing of triads that are still in key. That's 2 approaches. I want to talk about something that helped me personally. Really, just think about. It's just going up or down in thirds within a key. So I'll just summarize it for Niall. So A minor to A pure minor, not like cowboy. I'm still not even talking about 7. So of course you could play your A minor 7 arpeggio. But what I would do in my mind is look a third up, a third above, and a third down in that same key. So this is C major, E minor, C major, A minor. So I would say
all natural notes,
all white notes on the keyboard. So I say go up a third, so C major 7, the one that Niall brought, and the other one would be, this is much darker. It's going down a third, so I'm doing F major 7, because F, the chord in the key of C major, is major 7, so this is like the opposite of getting structures. It's starting from the 13, as you said. And this is really, really deep. And you can do the same thing with a C. So say you start with a C chord, you can go above a third, you can go E minor 7. Can you start with C? C. This is E minor 7. C, D, E, you go up a third, or you do down a third, so A minor 7. There again.
Let's try this again.
So just going, look up a third, look down a third, what arpeggio is there, and then you wind up pretty much with almost all the notes in the scale anyways. So it's just another way to wrap your head around that concept. So that's my little shortcut.
Just as an aside to all of that, I know that this sounds really, really complicated, but I want you to always keep in mind that there are only 7 notes in the scale at any given moment. Generally speaking, there's some funny exceptions that end up happening, but really it comes down to the fact that there are only 7 notes in any key center at any given moment. So really, you're just sort of experimenting with different combinations of the same 7 notes. So not as complicated as you think. It's just about perspective and how those different notes relate back to your bass note, the A. So your upright bass player, that person is king. You want to be relating back to that bass player at all times, and how those notes that you're playing relate back to him, to what he's playing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you're playing the arpeggio of 1, 3, 5, 7. You have 4 notes. You go 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. You have 5 notes. Already there, most of your 7 notes are wrapped up.
Yeah.
So, how do you do that?
Yeah.
So just quickly before we end the office hours, we'll talk about your approach to getting the dominance, getting your upper structure, and your other. We'll just do it quickly for the arpeggios, the triads pairing one.
So when it comes to dominant chords, these are like we have the 2, the 5, and the 1 at all times, right? We always talk about how this is the most important sort of chord progression in jazz. Let's talk about the 5 chord. It's really, really important. Sets up the tension that gets resolved on the 1 chord. When it comes to any 5 chord, there are 2 main upper structures that you can use as a shortcut to, instead of playing your dominant G7 voicing, right? You can play that as like a 9 with on the pinky on the first string, that sort of thing. If you wanted to create an upper structure for a G9 chord, so root 3, 5, flat 7, natural 9. You can play it as an upper structure by just removing the root. So you get 3rd, 5th, flat 7th, natural 9. And those notes, B, D, F, A, actually form another arpeggio that you might recognize. It's your B minor 7 flat 5. Some people call it half diminished. I hate that. It doesn't tell you anything. B minor 7 flat 5. So that's a really good way to express a G7 chord, a G9 chord, or any G dominant chord.
That's thinking a third up still.
Just thinking a third up. Now, if you wanted a different set of extensions, like if you had a G7 in a minor context, like D minor 7 flat 5, G7 flat 13, or G7 flat 9, heading to C minor instead of C major, then instead of a B minor 7 flat 5 chord, you'll get an A flat in the key of C minor. That's your flat 9 instead of your natural 9 on top of the G7. So and what this structure is, you might recognize it as a diminished 7th arpeggio, fully diminished 7th. So any inversion, any fingering of a diminished 7th, of a B diminished 7th chord, will give you a G7 flat 9 over a G bass. And any expression of a B minor 7 flat 5 over a G bass will give you the natural 9 extension. So just really quick and dirty ways of substituting your G7 chord with an upper structure starting a third above it. So 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th. flat 9 or natural 9, doesn't really matter, but you get these two chord shapes that you're probably already familiar with. B minor 7 flat 5 or B diminished 7.
Very good. And if I might add, if you look at the G, you can say, since G7 is in the key of C major, so say B minor 7 flat 5 is an arpeggio to think about. D minor 7 is an arpeggio to think about. It will give you a G sus, 7 sus. And another, if you go a third up still, you get F. So that's the F major 7. So play the chord and go.
That's a really nice way to express that.
It's an F major 7. Can you believe you're thinking about F major 7, but your chord is actually G7. So this is to answer Niall's question. Niall, sorry. We have these things you could pretty much, out of all 7 chords, we have 4 arpeggios that are super useful and easy to use on a G7 chord in the key of C major,
and
diatonic key.
And as with anything, as I mentioned before in office hours, any sort of way of substituting in different fingerings for a particular chord, they all have their own sound, their own characteristics. It's really important, and it's really it's a lot faster musically to think of the character that you want, and when you're practicing, associate that character with the fingering that you're using. So if I go and play an F major 7 arpeggio over the G, that has a very specific sound. It feels like it's a lot softer. Find words for yourself that really give that sort of characteristic. And in doing so, you'll end up with a much faster memory for how to express yourself over these chords. So if you practice a new substitution, if you practice B minor 7 flat 5 over G for that G9 sound, give it a name, give it a feeling, a character. That way you can access it faster. You can just grab it easily in the middle of a jam. You don't have to think about it. Wait, what can I do here with? I know that F major 7 works well over G7. By that point, you're already 8 bars down the line, and they've left you in the dust, right? Like, so it's much faster and much more musical if you think of a character for each one, and understand that affect that each substitution has over the same chord. Different ways of expressing.
Very good. And sorry to interrupt.
Can't get to triad pairs. It's
in about 3 sentences. What would be the triad substitution idea you had? So for G7.
So for like a G7, you can try out the 2 different minor triads on top of G7. Start one on the 5th, D, and then a whole step above that, the 7th. The 13th, E. Yep. And this is a very typical thing that you'll hear.
Kurt Rosenwinkel do.
Oh, that too, yeah. I was thinking, like on some of those Miles Davis records with not Miles Ahead, Milestones.
Yeah.
The pianist on Milestones, is it Tommy Flanagan?
I don't remember.
The pianist on Milestones does this all the time, where it's like, that's just D minor, E minor, E minor, an inversion of E minor, back down to D minor, then back down to D minor. The first finger you did.
How the arpeggio sound over that? So D minor 7, D minor triad, and E minor triad.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
So if you know your triad voicings, you can alternate between these 2 diatonic triads in the key of C major. All of this is in C major. And you'll get this really interesting sound, because you got 2 structures that are familiar, but they're expressed over this. They're in a different setting than they usually would be, kind of like that whole painting thing that I mentioned earlier.
Good.
So yeah.
Well, we have an Adobe Flash Player update, so we have to leave you on that, or else the computer will crash. But seriously, this whole triad pairing approach, I had seen. I think I have a book here about that, where his approach would be to use the 2 major triads within the key. So say in C major would be F major and G major. It says practice this over C major or over any other mode of C. So this is the same sort of approach, but it's 2 parallel minor triads. Yep. Really cool sound.
Yeah,
really
definitely.
Idiomatic sound. So that's it. Any other parting thoughts?
just to really emphasize, all that is taking the same notes you always play for C major and arranging them in a different structure to get new forms of expression. That's all it is. Same notes, different order. And so, yeah, go ham with that.
Go work. Back to work.
Get back to the shed.
That's right. Once again, my name is Marc from jazzguitarlessons.net. This is Nathan from jazzguitarlessons.net. We will see you soon on the website, where our slogan is improve your jazz guitar playing with a real teacher. However, now is improve your jazz guitar playing with real teachers.
Yeah.
Yes, and we'll see you soon on either unlimited membership, The Shed, which is a new offering. If you're an unlimited membership and you want to spike things up a notch and you want to get things to the next level, we have daily workouts for you every week, and this is fresh out of the oven. No, it's not static. It's always fresh. If you have any sort of questions about this or anything else we publish, you can always leave a comment below. It'll be a pleasure to get back to you.
Definitely.
And we will see you next week we have weekly office hours and webinars that we run. So we'll see you there. Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Take care.